Afternoon, first graders. This morning we talked about Little Red Riding Hood. We read the story. We talked about some of the characters, and then we just finished reading Petite Rouge, which is sort of an adaptation. An adaptation is maybe a different version of the same story with the same kinds of characters and themes. And so what we're going to do to organize the different characters and themes and plots and locations of the story is we're going to do a Venn diagram. And we've done these before. We had already talked about all of the different vocabulary words that are in our new story and in our old story, but mostly in Petite Rouge because it is a Cajun story and it has some different vocabulary that we're probably not used to. A pirogue is like a canoe, and we talked about how they use those to move through the swamp. Hot sauce. I think we all kind of know what hot sauce is. It's spicy.
I got that in my mouth when I said a bad word once.
Oh, sometimes that's how moms do that. Yeah, we don't want you to say bad words. Boudin is a type of sausage. It's a Cajun sausage. A cloak is a cake. A lumberjack is somebody who cuts down trees.
I watch Axemen on TV.
When those are lumberjacks. Yeah, they use chainsaws. And in our story, the lumberjack was using an axe. That's how they used to do it back in the olden days. A hero is somebody who saves the day. And we talked about in Little Red Riding Hood that there were two heroes in that story. And a villain is the bad guy. The swamp is an area, we talked about how like in Louisiana, near the bayou, that there's areas that are marsh and it's like water and lots of vegetation. It's very hard to get in there, and there are lots of different kinds of animals that live there. Like in this story we talk about Claude, and he is, what kind of animal is he, John?
He's an alligator.
He is an alligator. And then we talk about forest, which is an area where there's lots of trees, and usually not a lot of people live in the forest. It's kind of like a secluded area. And then Cajun, we talked about Cajun was a type of culture. The Cajun culture was in Louisiana, and when we watched the author Mike Artell read Petite Rouge in his Cajun accent, he explained the Cajun history. So we've kind of gone over all these things. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our Venn diagram, and we've used these before, but I'm going to remind you how it works. I titled, there's two titles. We do two big circles. One side, this part of the circle is only going to have items that relate to Little Red Riding Hood. And the center is going to relate to both stories, and this side is only going to relate to Petite Rouge Riding Hood. So after we go through, I've got cards here, and they have different characters or settings or ideas, and we're going to go back through, and we're going to put those where they belong on here, and then we'll talk about this at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the cards, and if you think you know the answer, raise your hand, and I'll call on you to put it there. And if nobody knows, or if you need some help, you can ask me, and I'll be happy to help you. Okay, the first one is forest. Forest. Which story, or was it in both stories, for forest? Christy?
Forest was in Little Red Riding Hood.
That is correct. Yes, she walked through the forest. And how about, oh, here we go. Here's a character.
That's Little Red Riding Hood. That looks just like the picture in the book.
Okay, next time raise your hand though before you want to be called a punt. Thank you, John. Yes, you're right. That is Little Red Riding Hood, and she did walk through the forest. And oh, here's a good one. We just read this story. Yes, Christy?
That one I think goes in Petite Rouge side.
Yes, that's right. This is grandmère. That's a Cajun way of saying grandma. It's actually French Cajun. Grandmère. She was snapping in her bed. She didn't know what was coming. Here's another character in the story. Does anybody know which story that was in? Yes, John.
I think that was in Petite Rouge.
You are right. This is Petite Rouge.
There's a lady in my neighborhood that has a duck like that on her porch, and she changes its clothes to the weather.
Oh, really? Well, that's very interesting. Hero. Now, go ahead, Christy. Which story would you, is there a hero? Is it in Little Red Riding Hood? Is it in
Well, there
Petite
was a
Rouge?
hero in both of them.
That's right, there was a hero in both of them. So we're going to put that right here in the middle because that is a theme that's in both stories. All right. Basket of bread. Do you remember which story, or was this in both stories, that there was a basket of bread? Yes, John.
I think it was a Little Red Riding Hood.
That is true. You're right. In Little Red Riding Hood, she carried a basket of baked breads that her mom had given her to take to her grandma. So we're going to put that over here. There's another character. Christy, do you know this character?
Yeah, I think that looks like the wolf
You're
from.
right.
It goes on the Little Red Riding Hood side.
That's correct. You are right. All right. Let's see. Ooh, a villain. Anybody know where the villain goes?
Is that the same thing as a bad guy?
It is the same thing as a bad guy. Was it in Little Red Riding Hood or Petite Rouge Riding Hood or both?
I think they had both.
You are right. In Little Red Riding Hood, the wolf was the villain. And we haven't come across the villain yet for Petite Rouge. Let's see if we can find that villain. Well, who is this character? Does anybody remember this character?
Oh yeah,
Yes, Christy.
that's Claude.
Oh yeah, Claude.
Yeah, he's the bad guy in the Petite Rouge.
You are correct. Claude was the bad guy. He was the villain. What was he trying to do within that story? Do you remember what he said? He was trying to eat Petite Rouge. A red cloak. Now, is a red cloak in Little Red Riding Hood? Is it in Petite Rouge Riding Hood?
It looks like they both have them on.
You are correct. That is one way that they showed the similarity between the two characters, even though one's an animal and one's a human. By wearing the red cloak, we were able to tell that this is a version of this story because they're both wearing the red cloaks. Ooh, a pirogue to grandma. I should have probably wrote to grandmère. Yes,
That's on the Petite Rouge side.
you're right, because the pirogue was what? Does anybody remember?
I think it's a boat.
You're right, it's a boat, like a canoe. Yep, that's
I
correct.
thought it was a sausage.
No. But close, here we go, boudin. You know what boudin is?
It's like a hot dog.
You have to raise your hand. But yes, John. I know, that's hard to remember sometimes, but yes, John.
It's like a hot dog.
Sort of, it's a sausage, yes, it's a Cajun sausage. And this is what Little Red, or Petite Rouge was taking, to her grandmère's house. Instead of the basket of bread, she was taking boudin. All right. Swamp. Does anybody remember which story had the setting of a swamp? Was it Little Red Riding Hood, Petite Rouge, or both? Yes, Christy.
It was Petite Rouge.
You're right. You're correct. That is where the story takes place. It's in the swamp. Just a couple more. Hot sauce. Does anybody remember what story had hot sauce? Yes, John.
I
Thank
think
you.
it was Petite Rouge.
You are correct. Very good. Petite Rouge, her cat, used the hot sauce, put it on the boudin, and shoved it into whose mouth?
Claude.
Yes, and Claude thought he ate. Remember, he thought he ate Petite Rouge. And he flew out of there, and he was not seen again. Walked to Grandma's house. In which story did the character walk to Grandma's house? Yes, Christy?
Did they both go to Grandma's house?
They did, but they went there in two different ways.
Okay, so. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. So that goes on Little Red Riding Hood.
That's correct, yes. Little Red Riding Hood walked to Grandma's house through the forest with her basket of bread. And Petite Rouge took the pirogue to Grandma's house with her boudin. Here's another character. Does anybody know who this one is? Yes, John.
I think that's Grandma. for Little Red Riding Hood.
You are correct. That is the grandma from Little Red Riding Hood. All right, last one. Let's see where this one goes. Oh, the lumberjack. Does anybody remember the lumberjack? Which story, or was he in both stories? Yes, Christy?
I think he was just in Little Red Riding Hood.
You are correct.
He
Remember?
hit the wolf or something.
Yeah, he smacked the wolf on the head, which made him cough up the grandma who he had ate earlier, and she got away fine. And he ran off in the forest, never to be seen again. So, can we see like how helpful a Venn diagram is? It can help us really organize the ideas of a story, the characters of stories, and also to see the similarities. We can still kind of compare and contrast the ones that don't fit in both stories because we can see that, like I said earlier, both of the Little Red Riding Hood and Petite Rouge, which means Little Red, both of those characters wore red cloaks. So the authors were definitely trying to relate this story to this story, but maybe make it a little bit different. And we had Claude as the alligator instead of the wolf, and it was a little bit different version because the author, Mike Artell, was Cajun, and so he was tying that story back to his Cajun roots. All right, it's time to go ahead and go back to your desks, and let's get our math workbooks out, and we're going to talk about our math lesson.